The rain poured down like it had no intention of stopping anytime soon. It was one of those nights where the city seemed to shrink under the weight of the storm. Cars splashed through puddles on the streets, their headlights cutting through the gray curtain of water that blurred everything into a haze. In downtown Chicago, amidst the chaos of traffic and hurried pedestrians, Emma Carter stood under the flickering light of a street lamp, holding her umbrella tightly against the wind. Emma wasn't supposed to be out in this weather. She had just finished her shift at the diner, her feet aching from hours of standing, her mind tired from dealing with rude customers all evening. All she wanted was to get back to her tiny apartment, take off her soaked shoes, and collapse onto the couch. But as she waited for the light to turn green so she could cross the street, something caught her eye, a figure struggling to make his way across the road. It was an old man, dressed in a dark overcoat that clung to him because of the rain. He leaned heavily on a wooden cane, each step slow and deliberate as though every movement took great effort. The cars zipped by without slowing down, their drivers either too distracted or too impatient to notice the frail man trying desperately to reach the other side. Emma's heart sank as she watched him hesitate, clearly unsure if he should continue or retreat. Without thinking twice, Emma stepped forward, gripping her umbrella firmly. "Hey!" she called out over the sound of the rain and the honking horns. "Wait, I'll help you." The old man looked up, startled, then nodded weakly. Emma hurried toward him, dodging the spray of water kicked up by passing vehicles. When she reached him, she held the umbrella over both of them, shielding them from the relentless downpour. Up close, she could see how worn his face was, lined with age and etched with fatigue. Yet there was a certain calmness in his eyes, a quiet resilience that made her wonder about the life he must have lived. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the noise around them. "I didn't think anyone would stop." "Of course someone would stop," Emma replied, smiling despite the situation. "You can't stay out here in this weather." Together they began moving slowly across the street. The old man moved with care, each step deliberate, while Emma stayed close, making sure the umbrella covered him completely. By the time they reached the sidewalk on the opposite side, Emma was drenched from the waist down, but she didn't care. Helping this stranger felt like the right thing to do, even if it meant getting a little wetter herself. Once they were safely out of the way, the old man turned to her again, his expression filled with gratitude. "You're very kind," he said. "Most people wouldn't have bothered." Emma shrugged modestly. "Anyone would have done the same. Are you okay? Do you need help getting home?" For a moment, the old man hesitated, as though weighing whether to accept her offer. Finally, he nodded. "If it's not too much trouble," he said. "My place isn't far from here." Relieved that he hadn't refused, Emma smiled. "No trouble at all, let's go." As they walked together, Emma couldn't help but glance at him sideways. There was something intriguing about this man, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Despite his frail appearance, there was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself, a dignity that hinted at a life full of experiences. She wondered what his story was, but she didn't ask. Instead, she focused on keeping the umbrella steady and steering clear of the largest puddles. They passed rows of buildings, their windows glowing faintly in the gloomy evening. The streets were quieter now, most people having sought refuge indoors to escape the storm. Eventually, the old man stopped in front of a modest townhouse tucked between two taller structures. Its exterior was elegant yet understated, with neatly trimmed bushes lining the pathway to the front door. "This is me," the old man said, turning to face her. "Thank you again for your kindness. I don't know what I would have done without your help tonight." "It was nothing," Emma insisted, though she knew it wasn't entirely true. Helping strangers wasn't always easy, especially when it meant going out of your way. Still, she didn't regret it. Something about this encounter felt meaningful, though she couldn't explain why. The old man extended his hand and Emma shook it gently. "My name is Harold Bennett," he said. "And you are?" "Emma Carter," she replied. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Bennett." Harold smiled warmly. "Please call me Harold, and perhaps we'll meet again someday, Emma." With that, he turned and walked up the steps to his house, disappearing inside. Emma lingered for a moment, watching as the lights flickered on in the windows. Then, shaking her head slightly as if to clear her thoughts, she turned and headed back toward the street. By the time she reached her apartment, Emma was soaked to the bone. Her clothes stuck to her skin uncomfortably, and her hair dripped water onto the floor as she peeled off her jacket. But despite the chill seeping into her bones, she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had been special somehow. She thought about Harold, the way he had thanked her so sincerely, the subtle strength in his gaze, the elegance of his home. There was more to him than met the eye, she was sure of it. But for now, all she could do was hope that their paths might cross again someday. Little did Emma know that chance meeting would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. For now, though, she simply dried off, brewed herself a cup of tea, and settled onto the couch, replaying the evening's events in her mind. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the remnants of the day and heralding the beginning of something new. The next day, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Harold. She replayed their encounter over and over in her mind, the way he had struggled to cross the street, the gratitude in his voice when she helped him, and the quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from him despite his frailty. There was something about him that lingered in her thoughts like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. By late afternoon, after finishing another long shift at the diner, Emma made up her mind. She decided to check up on Harold, just to make sure he was okay. It wasn't far out of her way, and something deep inside told her it was the right thing to do. So, armed with a small box of cookies she had picked up from the bakery near her apartment, Emma set off toward Harold's townhouse. When she arrived, she hesitated for a moment before ringing the doorbell. The rain from the previous night had cleared, leaving behind crisp autumn air and a faint scent of wet leaves. Moments later, the door opened, and there stood Harold, looking surprised but pleased to see her. "Emma," he exclaimed, his face lighting up with a smile. "What brings you here?" "I just wanted to make sure you were doing all right," Emma said quickly, suddenly feeling a bit awkward. "After last night, I mean, and I brought these." She held up the box of cookies shyly. "They're not much, but I thought you might like them." Harold chuckled warmly. "That's very kind of you, my dear. Please come in." He stepped aside to let her enter, and Emma found herself in a cozy living room filled with elegant yet comfortable furniture. A fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting a golden glow over the space. On the walls hung several paintings and photographs, each one telling a story of its own. Emma noticed a framed picture on the mantel, a younger Harold standing beside a group of people all dressed formally, as if celebrating some kind of achievement. Harold gestured for her to sit, and soon they were settled in armchairs by the fire, sipping hot tea. For a while they talked about simple things, the weather, how Emma liked working at the diner, and what Harold enjoyed doing in his free time. But as the conversation went on, Harold began sharing more about himself. "I used to work in technology," he said casually, stirring his tea. "Long ago, when computers were still considered a novelty. My company developed software that helped businesses run more efficiently. We grew quite large over the years." Emma blinked in surprise. "Really? That sounds amazing." "It was a good run," Harold admitted with a modest shrug. "But success isn't everything, you know. Sometimes the most meaningful moments are the small ones, like meeting someone who takes the time to help an old man cross the street." His words made Emma blush slightly. She didn't think of herself as particularly special or heroic. She had simply done what anyone should have done. Still, Harold's appreciation touched her deeply. As the evening wore on, Harold continued to share stories from his life. He spoke of challenges he'd faced, risks he'd taken, and lessons he'd learned along the way. Emma listened intently, captivated by his wisdom and humility. Despite his accomplishments, Harold never once came across as boastful. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in connecting with her, asking questions about her dreams and aspirations. At one point, Emma confessed, "I've always wanted to go to college, but it's hard to find the time or the money. Working 2 jobs doesn't leave much room for anything else." Harold nodded thoughtfully. Life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? But don't lose hope, Emma. Sometimes opportunities come when we least expect them. Before she left, Harold walked her to the door. As they said goodbye, he handed her a small envelope. "For your troubles," he said with a twinkle in his eye. Emma frowned, confused. "What is this?" "Just a token of my gratitude," Harold replied firmly. "You deserve it." She tried to protest, insisting she hadn't done anything extraordinary, but Harold wouldn't hear of it. Reluctantly, she accepted the envelope, promising to repay him someday. What she didn't realize was that inside the envelope was far more than she expected, a sum of money generous enough to change her circumstances entirely. On her walk home, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Harold was unlike anyone she'd ever met. He was kind, wise, and generous, yet completely unassuming. She wondered how many other people knew the truth about who he really was. To her, he was simply Harold, an elderly man with a gentle soul and a knack for making others feel valued. Over the following days, Emma thought often about their conversation. Harold's encouragement stayed with her, planting a seed of possibility in her mind. Maybe going to college wasn't such an impossible dream after all. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to make it happen. Little did she know, Harold had already begun setting plans into motion. Though he hadn't mentioned it outright, he saw potential in Emma, potential that reminded him of himself when he was younger. Determined, resilient, and full of untapped talent, she was exactly the kind of person he believed in. And so, without Emma realizing it, her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. All because one rainy night, she stopped to help an old man cross the street. Weeks passed, and Emma's life began to change in ways she hadn't anticipated. After her visit to Harold's house, she opened the envelope he had given her. To her astonishment, it contained enough money to cover several months of living expenses. At first, she felt guilty accepting such generosity, but Harold's words echoed in her mind. Don't lose hope. Encouraged by his belief in her, Emma decided to take a leap of faith. She applied to a local university, choosing a program in business administration. It wasn't easy balancing work, studies, and personal responsibilities, but something inside her clicked. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she was moving toward a goal bigger than herself. Harold continued to play a role in her journey. Every few days they would meet for tea or coffee, discussing everything from coursework to career aspirations. During one of these meetings, Harold asked her a question that caught her off guard. "Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" he asked casually, stirring his coffee. Emma laughed nervously. "Me? Start a business? I'm just trying to get through this semester." Harold leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "Why not? You have the drive and the creativity. All you need is a little guidance and maybe a good idea." The idea seemed far-fetched, but Harold's confidence in her planted a seed. Over the next few weeks, Emma started brainstorming concepts during her free time. One evening, as she sorted through old electronics at home, inspiration struck. She realized how much electronic waste people generated without thinking twice about recycling or repurposing it. What if she could create a company that turned discarded devices into something useful? Excited by the idea, Emma shared it with Harold during their next meeting. His eyes lit up immediately. "That's brilliant," he said. "Not only is it innovative, but it also addresses a real-world problem. Sustainability is the future, Emma." With Harold's encouragement, Emma began researching sustainable technology startups. She spent hours reading articles, watching interviews with entrepreneurs, and sketching out plans for her hypothetical company. Slowly but surely, her vague idea began taking shape. Harold offered more than just advice. He introduced her to influential people in the tech industry. At first, Emma felt intimidated meeting executives and investors, but Harold reassured her. "They're just people, Emma. Speak honestly, and let your passion shine through." One of these introductions led to a meeting with a venture capitalist named Richard, who specialized in funding green initiatives. When Emma pitched her concept, a startup focused on reducing electronic waste by refurbishing and repurposing, old devices. Richard was impressed. He promised to keep her in mind when she was ready to seek funding. As her classes progressed, Emma threw herself into learning everything she could about entrepreneurship. Her professors noticed her dedication and encouraged her to participate in a university-wide pitch competition. Though nervous, Emma agreed, knowing it was an opportunity to test her idea on a larger stage. Preparing for the competition became a full-time job on top of her studies and part-time work. Late nights turned into early mornings as she refined her presentation, practiced her speech, and gathered data to support her proposal. Through it all, Harold remained her biggest cheerleader. He reviewed her slides, critiqued her delivery, and reminded her to breathe when nerves threatened to overwhelm her. On the day of the competition, Emma stood backstage, clutching her notes tightly. The auditorium buzzed with energy as students, faculty, and industry professionals filled the seats. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, heart pounding in her chest. For 10 minutes, Emma spoke passionately about her vision. She explained how her company would collect unused electronics, repair them, and either resell them at affordable prices or donate them to communities in need. She highlighted the environmental impact of reducing e-waste and emphasized the importance of creating jobs in underserved areas. By the time she finished, the audience erupted into applause. Though she didn't win first place, Emma earned second prize and valuable feedback from the judges. More importantly, her confidence soared. For the first time, she truly believed she could make her dream a reality. Afterward, Harold greeted her with a proud smile. "You did wonderfully," he said. "This is only the beginning, Emma. Keep pushing forward." Inspired by the experience, Emma dove deeper into her studies and continued networking with professionals in the field. With Harold's help, she secured an internship at a renewable energy firm, where she gained hands-on experience in managing projects and working with teams. Each step brought her closer to launching her own venture. Throughout this period, Emma never forgot the kindness Harold had shown her. His unwavering support reminded her that success isn't achieved alone. It's built on the shoulders of those who believe in us. Determined to pay it forward, she volunteered at community centers, mentoring high school students interested in STEM fields. By the end of her second year, Emma's hard work paid off. Her startup idea gained traction, earning recognition from both her peers and industry leaders. Investors took notice, and soon she was invited to present her plan to a panel of potential backers. This time she felt prepared, not just because of her knowledge, but because of the lessons Harold had taught her about resilience, humility, and perseverance. As Emma stood before the panel, ready to share her vision once again, she glanced at Harold, who sat quietly in the audience. His presence gave her strength, reminding her of how far she'd come since that rainy night months ago. From helping an old man cross the street to standing on the brink of transforming her life, Emma knew her journey was only beginning. Little did she realize Harold had even greater plans for her, a legacy waiting to unfold. But for now, she focused on the task ahead, determined to prove that dreams, no matter how big, are worth pursuing. Emma's life was moving faster than she ever thought possible. After months of preparation, late nights, and endless revisions to her business plan, the day had finally come. She was presenting her startup idea to a panel of seasoned investors. This wasn't just any pitch. It was her chance to turn her dream into reality. The conference room buzzed with anticipation as Emma adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath. She glanced at Harold sitting quietly in the corner of the room. His presence calmed her nerves, reminding her of where she'd started and how far she'd come. With a steady voice, she began her presentation. "Good morning," she said, smiling confidently. "My name is Emma Carter, and I'm here today to introduce you to Renova Tech, a company dedicated to reducing electronic waste while creating opportunities for underserved communities." She clicked a button on the remote, and a slideshow appeared on the screen behind her. Charts, graphs, and images illustrated the growing problem of e-waste worldwide. Emma explained how millions of tons of discarded electronics ended up in landfills each year, polluting the environment and wasting valuable resources. But instead of focusing solely on the problem, she shifted to solutions. "Our mission is simple yet impactful," she continued. We collect older broken devices, refurbish them, and either resell them at affordable prices or donate them to schools and community centers in need. For items beyond repair, we extract usable parts and recycle the rest responsibly. As Emma spoke, she noticed the investors leaning forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to interest. One of them jotted down notes, another nodded approvingly. Encouraged by their reactions, Emma pressed on, detailing her financial projections, marketing strategy, and plans for scaling the business. By the time she finished, the room erupted into applause. Questions followed, some challenging, others curious, but Emma handled them all with poise. When the session ended, several investors approached her to express their enthusiasm. "You've got a solid plan," one of them said, shaking her hand. "We'll be in touch soon." Walking out of the meeting, Emma felt a mix of excitement and relief. Harold joined her outside, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You were incredible," he said simply. "I knew you could do it." Emma smiled, though she couldn't shake the feeling that she owed so much of her success to him. "I couldn't have done it without your help, Harold. You've been there every step of the way." Harold waved off her gratitude. "You're the one who put in the hard work, Emma. All I did was point you in the right direction." Over the next few weeks, Emma waited anxiously for the investor's decision. In the meantime, she threw herself into finalizing the details of her business. She scouted locations for her first workshop, negotiated contracts with recycling partners, and even designed a logo for Renova Tech. Each task brought her closer to making her vision a reality. Finally, the call came. One of the lead investors informed her that they were ready to fund her project. The amount exceeded her expectations, giving her the resources she needed to launch Renova Tech on a larger scale than she'd initially planned. Emma celebrated quietly with Harold over dinner. That evening, they sat in a cozy restaurant, the warm glow of candlelight reflecting off their faces. As they toasted to her success, Harold raised his glass and said, "This is only the beginning, Emma. Your journey has just begun." He was right. Over the following months, Renova Tech grew rapidly. Emma hired a small team of passionate individuals who shared her vision. Together, they set up operations in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. The space was bustling with activity, workers sorting through piles of donated electronics, technicians repairing damaged devices, and volunteers preparing shipments for distribution. Word of Renova Tech spread quickly. Local news outlets featured stories about the innovative startup tackling e-waste, and soon, Emma found herself invited to speak at conferences and events. Each appearance strengthened her reputation as a leader in sustainability and social entrepreneurship. Despite her growing fame, Emma remained grounded. She visited schools and community centers regularly, explaining the importance of recycling electronics and encouraging young people to pursue careers in STEM fields. Her efforts inspired countless students, many of whom credited her with sparking their interest in technology. But success didn't come without challenges. Competitors emerged, some attempting to discredit Renova Tech by spreading false rumors about its practices. Critics questioned whether a small startup could truly make a dent in such a massive global issue. There were days when Emma doubted herself, wondering if she was cut out for the pressures of running a business. During one particularly tough week, Emma visited Harold seeking advice. She arrived at his house looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes betraying her lack of sleep. "I don't know if I can keep going," she admitted, sinking into the armchair by the fireplace. "It feels like everyone is against me." Harold listened patiently, then leaned forward, his expression serious. "Let me tell you something, Emma. Everyone faces setbacks. Even I did, more times than I care to admit. Success isn't measured by how many times you fall, it's measured by how many times you get back up." His words struck a chord deep within her. She realized that every challenge was an opportunity to learn and grow stronger. Determined not to give up, Emma returned to work with renewed focus. She addressed the criticisms head-on, providing transparent reports on Renova Tech's processes and impact. She reached out to allies in the industry, building partnerships that strengthened her company's credibility. Slowly but surely, the tide turned. Renova Tech gained widespread recognition for its contributions to environmental sustainability and community development. Awards poured in, and Emma became a sought-after speaker at international forums. Through it all, she never forgot the lessons Harold had taught her: perseverance, humility, and the importance of staying true to oneself. One evening, as Emma stood on stage accepting an award for social entrepreneurship, she paused to reflect on her journey. From that rainy night when she saved an old man unaware of his identity, to becoming a trailblazer in her field, everything had come full circle. And though Harold was no longer as physically present in her daily life, he preferred staying in the background watching her soar. His influence remained undeniable. Emma dedicated her award to Harold, thanking him publicly for believing in her when no one else did. Backstage after the ceremony, Harold greeted her with a proud smile. "You've come so far," he said softly, "and you've still got so much farther to go." Emma nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with courage and determination. Because somewhere along the way she had stopped seeing herself as just a diner worker helping strangers cross the street. Now she saw herself as someone capable of changing the world, one recycled device at a time. As Emma's company continued to grow, she found herself busier than ever. Renova Tech was expanding rapidly, opening new workshops in other cities and forming partnerships with major corporations. The media praised her innovative approach to sustainability, and her team worked tirelessly to meet increasing demand. But amidst all the success, Emma couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something, or someone, was missing. Harold. For months, Harold had been a constant presence in her life, offering guidance and encouragement whenever she needed it. Yet lately, he seemed distant. His visits became less frequent, and when they did meet, he appeared weaker, more tired than usual. At first, Emma chalked it up to his age, telling herself that everyone slows down eventually. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. One crisp autumn morning, Emma decided to visit Harold without calling ahead. She arrived at his townhouse carrying a basket of fresh fruit and pastries, hoping to surprise him. When he opened the door, however, her smile faded. Harold looked thinner, his face paler than she remembered. Despite his frail appearance, he greeted her warmly, inviting her inside. "Emma," he said, his voice softer than usual. "What brings you here today?" "I just wanted to check on you," she replied, setting the basket on the kitchen counter. "You haven't been answering my calls as much lately." Harold chuckled lightly, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I've been keeping busy, my dear, and I didn't want to bother you while you're running such an important business." "That's not true," Emma said firmly, sitting beside him on the couch. "You've never been a bother. You've been my rock through all of this. If anything, I owe you everything." Harold shook his head gently. "No, Emma. You've done all of this on your own. I merely gave you a little push." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging in the air. Finally, Emma broke the quiet. "Are you okay, Harold? Really?" He hesitated, before answering, his gaze drifting toward the window. "I'm getting older, Emma. My body isn't what it used to be, but I've lived a full life, and I have no regrets, especially now, knowing that I've helped someone like you." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "Don't talk like that, you still have so much to give." Harold smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but even if my time is short, I know I've left a legacy in you, someone who will carry forward the values I believe in: kindness, perseverance, and making the world a better place." Emma reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You've changed my life, Harold. I wouldn't be where I am today without you. Please let me help you now the way you helped me." Harold nodded slowly, touched by her sincerity. "All right, Emma. Thank you." Over the next few weeks, Emma made it a priority to spend more time with Harold. She brought meals, read books aloud to him, and listened intently as he shared stories from his past. Some days, They simply sat together in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's company. Through these moments, Emma realized how much Harold had taught her, not just about business, but about life itself. During one of their conversations, Harold spoke about his family, or rather, the lack of it. "I never had children of my own," he confessed. "My work consumed most of my life, and I suppose I thought there would always be time for personal connections later. But now," he trailed off, his voice tinged with regret. "You have me," Emma said softly, "and everyone at Renova Tech. We're your family now." Harold's eyes glistened with tears, and he squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Emma. That means more to me than you'll ever know." As winter approached, Harold's health declined further. Emma hired a nurse to assist him at home, ensuring he received the care he needed. Despite his condition, Harold remained cheerful, finding joy in small things. A warm cup of tea, a favorite song playing on the radio, or watching Emma share updates about Renova Tech's progress. One snowy evening, Emma visited Harold with a photo album she'd created. It contained pictures of her journey, from her early days at the diner to her recent achievements with Renova Tech. She flipped through the pages with him, pointing out milestones and sharing memories. "This one was taken after our first big shipment of refurbished laptops went to a school in Detroit," she explained, smiling. "And this one's from the conference in New York last month. Can you believe how far we've come?" Harold chuckled weakly. "I can believe it because I know you, Emma. You're unstoppable." Later that night, as Emma prepared to leave, Harold stopped her at the door. "Wait," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to give you." He handed her a small envelope, similar to the one he'd given her years ago. Inside was a letter, handwritten in neat cursive. "Read it when you're ready," he said. "But remember this. Success isn't about money or fame. It's about leaving the world better than you found it. And you, Emma, are doing exactly that." Emma hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Harold, for everything." The next morning, Harold passed away peacefully in his sleep. When Emma received the news, she felt a mix of grief and gratitude. Though she mourned the loss of her mentor and friend, she also celebrated the incredible impact he'd had on her life. At Harold's funeral, Emma delivered a heartfelt eulogy. She spoke about his kindness, wisdom, and generosity, highlighting how he had transformed her life in ways he could never have imagined. As she stood before the gathered crowd, she promised to honor his memory by continuing to make a difference in the world. In the days that followed, Emma finally opened Harold's letter. It was filled with words of encouragement and advice, reminding her to stay humble, keep learning, and always prioritize helping others. At the end of the letter, Harold included a final request: to use his remaining wealth to establish a foundation supporting underprivileged students and aspiring entrepreneurs. Moved by his wishes, Emma founded the Harold Bennett Legacy Foundation. Through scholarships, mentorship programs, and community initiatives, the foundation carried forward Harold's vision of empowering the next generation. Every milestone achieved by the foundation felt like a tribute to the man who had believed in her when no one else did. Years later, as Emma stood on stage accepting another award, this time for her humanitarian efforts, she paused to reflect on her journey. From that rainy night when she saved an old man unaware of his identity, to becoming a leader in sustainability and philanthropy, everything had come full circle. And though Harold was no longer physically present, his spirit lived on, in her work, in the lives she touched, and in the countless dreams she helped bring to life. Years had passed since Emma Carter first crossed paths with Harold Bennett on that rainy Chicago night. What began as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into a journey neither of them could have foreseen. Now, standing on stage in a grand auditorium, Emma felt overwhelmed, not just by the applause surrounding her, but by the realization of how far she'd come. The award in her hands was one of many she'd received over the years, yet this one felt different. It wasn't just recognition for her work with Renova Tech or the Harold Bennett Legacy Foundation. It was a testament to the ripple effect of compassion and belief. As she gazed out at the sea of faces before her, Emma spotted familiar ones. Former mentees from the foundation, colleagues who had supported her vision, and even some of Harold's distant relatives who had grown close to her over time. Emma took a deep breath and began her acceptance speech, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "When I think about where I started," she began, "I can't help but remember a man who changed my life forever. His name was Harold Bennett, and though he may not be here today, his legacy lives on through every person we've helped, every dream we've nurtured, and every step we've taken toward a better future." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Harold taught me something profound, that success isn't measured by wealth or titles, but by the lives you touch and the impact you leave behind. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and because of him, I learned to believe in others." Emma went on to share stories of individuals whose lives had been transformed by the foundation. There was Maria, a single mother who earned a scholarship to study engineering and now worked as a lead designer at Renova Tech. Then there was Jamal, a high school dropout turned entrepreneur, running a thriving, eco-friendly packaging business. Each story was a reminder of Harold's enduring influence, a quiet force propelling countless dreams forward. After finishing her speech, Emma stepped off the stage to thunderous applause. People lined up to congratulate her, shaking her hand and thanking her for her dedication. But amidst the celebration, Emma found herself reflecting on the bigger picture. Success, she realized, wasn't hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had played a part in this journey. Later that evening, after the event wound down, Emma returned to her office. She sat at her desk surrounded by mementos of her achievements, framed photos, awards, and letters from grateful beneficiaries. Her eyes landed on a small wooden plaque engraved with Harold's favorite quote, "Leave the world better than..." "You found it." Smiling softly, Emma picked up the plaque and traced its edges with her fingers. She thought about how much Harold would have loved seeing what she'd accomplished. More importantly, she thought about how his values, kindness, perseverance, and humility, had become the guiding principles of her life. Over the next few years, Emma continued expanding both Renova Tech and the Harold Bennett Legacy Foundation. Renova Tech grew into a global leader in sustainable technology, partnering with governments and organizations worldwide to tackle e-waste on a massive scale. Meanwhile, the foundation reached thousands of students and entrepreneurs, providing resources and support to help them achieve their goals. But Emma never lost sight of the personal connections that mattered most. She made it a point to mentor young leaders directly, sharing not only her expertise but also the lessons Harold had taught her. Whether it was offering advice during tough times or celebrating milestones big and small, Emma ensured that no one felt alone in their journey. One day, while visiting a community center supported by the foundation, Emma met a teenager named Lily. Lily reminded her so much of herself at that age, hardworking, determined, but unsure of her potential. After speaking with Lily for hours, Emma offered to guide her through college applications and career planning. Just like Harold had done for her, Emma saw untapped potential in Lily and vowed to nurture it. As the years rolled on, Emma's hair began to gray, and the lines around her eyes deepened. Yet her passion remained undimmed. She often joked that retirement wasn't an option for someone like her, though in truth she couldn't imagine stepping away from the work she loved. Eventually, Emma decided it was time to pass the torch. She appointed Maria, the same single mother who had once benefited from the foundation, as CEO of Renova Tech. Maria brought fresh energy and innovative ideas to the company, ensuring its continued growth. Meanwhile, Emma focused on mentoring the next generation of leaders, including Lily, who had blossomed into a brilliant environmental scientist. On a quiet spring afternoon, Emma visited Harold's grave for the first time in years. She knelt beside the headstone, placing a bouquet of wildflowers atop it. The wind rustled gently through the trees, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers. "Thank you, Harold," she whispered, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. You gave me a chance when I needed it most, and because of you, I've been able to give others the same opportunity. Your legacy will live on forever, not just in me, but in everyone whose life you've touched directly or indirectly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for Harold, for the journey they'd shared, and for the countless lives transformed along the way. As Emma stood and walked away, she glanced back one last time. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a warm glow over the cemetery. For a brief moment, she thought she saw Harold's silhouette standing nearby, smiling proudly. Shaking her head slightly, she smiled too, knowing that his spirit would always be with her. Emma's story was proof that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark extraordinary change. From helping an old man cross the street to building a global movement for sustainability and empowerment, her journey showed that true success lies not in individual achievement, but in lifting others up. And as long as people remembered Harold's name and the values he stood for, his legacy would continue to transform lives for generations to come.